A few miles north of me, there's a little family-owned farm. The family takes a vacation in July. Though, when they posted a job listing for a caretaker, my job would include feeding the animals, making sure the irrigation is working and harvesting some crops. It's a small operation, so it's not fields and fields of stuff. Plus, they were offering $2,000. At the time, that seemed like an amazing deal. Now, I'm not so sure about it. You see, the Gershons left me detailed instructions in the envelope along with half of the stipend, and as I sat down to read it, I realized that it sounded a little strange. Dear Emily, thank you for taking care of our farm to ensure your safety and happiness and the animals. We've included a list of instructions and tasks. Rule number 1, please feed the goats and chickens at 6 a.m. Sharp, they get pretty cranky if it's not on time. Rule number 2, you will need to prune off the floricanes and the raspberry patch. To do this, cut the canes, the branches that are woody and have already fruited. Wear thick gloves because there are thorns if you do get caught immediately. Head inside and call it Dr. Live C to make sure your wound is not infected. Rule number 3. The sunflower field is easy to maintain and brings beauty to our farm. However, if you ever see a sunflower that isn't facing the same direction as the others, immediately head inside. Do not return to the sunflower field. Into the following day, rule number 4. The farm is, as you know, surrounded by forest. Sometimes we get coyotes, foxes, or other wild animals prowling around the grounds at night. Don't worry. The animal pens are completely secure, and there's no need to check on the animals if you hear anything at night. In fact, we recommend you do not leave. The farmhouse between sunset and sunrise, rule number 5. Do not enter the corn maze. Even if you hear noises coming from the maze that sound like a child crying, do not enter the corn maze. Is not open to visitors yet. It's most likely the bobcats in the woods. Rule number 6. Do not be alarmed if you see the goats. Awake in the middle of the night, they are a semi-nocturnal and often wake up to roam, graze, and use the bathroom. Rule number 7. You may help yourself to any of the fruits or vegetables that you harvest. However, do not eat the apples from the northwest corner of the orchard. Rule number 8. We no longer use scarecrows. If you see one, please return to the house. Lock all the doors and close all the curtains. Stay inside until the following morning. Rule number 9. Make sure to always stock the farm. Stand twice a day in the morning and again in the afternoon at night. Take all the unsold produce inside and store it in the refrigerator. Rule number 10. We do not own any pigs. Thank you so very much, Emily. The Gershons. I glanced out the window. The sun was hanging low over the trees. Orange rays filtering through the forest. Ah, dang it. I'm not supposed to be out after dark because of the wolves or whatever. I better get cracking. I walked over to the goats first, and they huddled close to me as I filled their food bins, staring at me with their weirdest slit pupils. I tried to get it done as quickly as possible. Goats honestly freaked me out a little bit as I hurried away. One with black and white fur pushed its little face through. The fans. Nah, it bleeded, is staring at me, and the chickens were more skeptical to me, staring at me and letting out long boks as they bobbled their heads. As soon as they realized that I had food, though, they came over and pecked the ground. They were pretty cute, actually. I locked the gate and turned back towards the house. I froze across the field. For me stood the field of sunflowers, bright golden petals, and dark centers swaying slightly in the wind. But while all of them tilted away from me facing the dying sun, one of them near the edge of the field was, instead, at facing me. I stared at its pitch-black center. Didn't the note say something about that? Go inside if one of the sunflowers is pointing a different way. I locked up the chicken gate. Then I strode across the grass towards the old farmhouse, still carrying the bag of chicken feed. I was halfway to the house when I turned around again. I wish I had. And the sunflower was still facing me even, though based on my path it shouldn't have been. I picked up my pace towards the house. Oh, come on. What do you think is going to happen that Sunflower is going to chase after you and murder you? My brain knew that it was stupid, but there was something instinctual, a gut feeling that forced my legs to pump harder. I didn't even bother dropping the feet off of the shed. I raced into the house and locked all the doors. Phew, safe. I took a final glance out of the sunflower. And then I went into the tiny kitchen and started some water and boyfriend for pasta. By the time that I was sitting down to eat, I was shaking my head. So stupid, afraid of a sunflower. Something woke me up in the middle of the night. I sat up, my neck aching from the crappy pillow that they had left for me. I looked around my tiny bedroom, but nothing seemed a mess. Well, of course, there were things a mess. Like the peeling paint in the light bulb that flickered into the clogged toilet, but nothing different. I yawned and checked my phone. 3:12 a.m. Cyanide. Settled back into sleep. But before I drifted off, I heard a small, high-pitched noise coming from outside. I slowly forced myself out of bed and walked over to the window underneath me. The farm sprawled out into the darkness, but it was distorted in the farm cairn. Old glass shapes and colors bleeding into each other like running paint. I flipped the window lock and pushed it open. The wood is speaking loudly in my ears. I listened, silence. Then help me. A voice. A child's voice coming from the direction of the cornfield. That's no bobcat. My blood ran cold. I stared out into the distance at the cornfield, on the edge of the woods, hoping that it was just some lingering dream or something. But as I stood there, the cool summer breeze is wafting into the room. I heard, "It again, please help me." The voice wavered as if the child was crying. I squinted into the darkness, staring at the cornfield. I have to go out there, but then I remembered the Gershon's rule. But there was no way this was an animal. "Hey, I'm coming. Don't worry, here I..." shouted out the window. Silence, and then a rustling sound. I squinted at the cornfield, and I could see the stalks moving as something moved within them. "Stay where you are," I shouted into the darkness. "I'm coming to get you." The corn stalks continued to move, and every muscle that my body froze. The amount of corn moving, there was no way that it was just a small child in there. The corn was swaying, dancing, rolling in an area maybe 10 feet across, and it was making its way towards the edge of the field rapidly. I shut the window, then I closed the blinds, my heart hammering at my chest. I raced downstairs and checked the locks, and then finally, when I was sure that I was safe, I called the police. That they wouldn't even come out. There are no missing children in the area, and what you saw was most likely a bear, they explained calmly. I think they must all know about the Gershon's farm, so now I lie here in my bed listening to these snaps and rustles of the corn stalks. There's a chair wedged under my doorknob, and I've triple-checked all the locks. All I can do is wait for dawn. The 6 a.m. came all too early. The alarm blared in my ears, and I forced myself out of bed at groaning. The sun had just crested over the hill, and the sky was lit with the pale grey of dawn. I could hear the rooster crowing already. I looked out the window, scanned the farm, but everything looked normal. All the sunflowers were facing halfway towards me in direction of the rising sun. The cornfield was still. The chickens were a million about the coop at pecking the ground. I went downstairs and grabbed the bag of to feed that I had never put away and went out to the coop. The chickens were probably the only part of the farm that I liked. The fat little hands ran towards me as I poured the food onto the ground, making happy noises. They packed it up. I locked the gate and started over the hill towards the shad to get the go feed. And that's when I heard it. Oink! I stopped in my tracks. The Gershon's note said that they didn't own any pigs. The note didn't say anything about avoiding the pigs, though, so I was free to go fetch the go feed right. I started walking again up the hill, and that's when I realized There was something off about the sound. It almost sounded human, like a person saying oink instead of an actual animal sound. For a second, I had a weird mental image of a naked man covered in his own film, crouching on the ground saying oink, over and over. I shook my head and continued up the hill, and when I got to the top, I saw the source of the noise. A pink pig is standing in the grass. I let out a breath of relief. See, it's just an ordinary pig. I passed the pig, ignoring it completely, and I opened the chasse. I'd put the chicken feed back, pulled out the goat feed, and started back up the hill. I stopped dead as my eyes fell on that pig. Its face, it almost looked human. It's fleshy. Pink snout was shorter than it should be. Its curled, little ears sat low and flat. On its head and its eyes, they weren't round and beady, but almost almond-shaped, like a person's, with dark pupils that stared up at me in a way that suggested intelligence. The feedback fell out of my hands, and I stumbled back, but the pig didn't advance. It just stared at me with its human eyes. I backed away, keeping my eyes on it. I slowly walked around it so that I was going back towards the house. When I got over the hill and that horrible little face was finally out of my sight, I whipped around and broke into a run. What? What was that? I panted to myself as I locked the front door behind. Me not knowing what else to do, I pulled on my phone and called the police. But when they picked up, I wasn't sure what to say. I found a pig that doesn't look like a pig on a farm. The Gershons' farm. Did you touch the pig? The officer cut in. I what? Did you have any contact with the pig? Any at all? No. Good. We'll send an officer out to deal with it. 15 minutes later, I saw a police car pull up to the driveway. They asked me where I had seen it and then told me to stay inside. I went over to the window and I watched them and walk up the hill and then disappear. A minute passed and then a shrill squeal erupted in the silence. 5 minutes later, the officers reappeared carrying a large black plastic bag that swung with each stab. Hey, I call Ed out as they headed for the cruiser. What was that thing? The officers glanced at each other. Rabies, the female officer said, while the male I stuffed the bag into. In the back seat, a bunch of rabid pigs have been showing up in this area. Gotta send it off to get tested. Good thing you didn't touch it. And before I could ask her more questions, she hopped into the driver's side, and then they were gone. I stared out the window, utterly perplexed. Why didn't the Gershons tell me to stay away from the pigs? After the debacle with the pig, I decided to take it easy. I made a wholesome breakfast, read a few chapters of the thriller that I was working through, and called my boyfriend around 11 a.m., though I realized that I had forgotten to stock the farm stand. It was still technically morning, so I ran out into the field, filled my hood with zucchini and tomatoes, and ran down the driveway as fast as I could without spilling any of the produce. But as the little farm stand came into Viola, I saw that there was already somebody waiting. Now, I checked my watch, 11:49 a.m. I'm so sorry, I breathed as I spread the produce out on the wooden table. I was supposed to get this out earlier, but there was a pig and a just. Something made me stop rambling. I glanced up to see that the person standing there was a little odd. He was an old man, probably about 6 feet tall and very thin. He wore, surprisingly, a black suit and an old-timey bowler hat and the sweltering heat. He was smiling at me, but his teeth were deeply yellow and crooked and his eyes were sunken back in his skull. Nothing unnatural about him, just a lightly creepy-looking old guy. But in a way, he reminded me of the creepy dudes from that one Buffy the Vampire episode where they take away everyone's voices. So what are you looking for today? I asked when he didn't move to take any of the produce. The Gershons aren't here. I shook my head. I won't be back for 2 weeks. He said thoughtfully. They didn't tell me they were leaving. Oh, you know then. He let out a small chocola. You could say that I waited for him to either take some produce or leave. But he didn't do either, he just stood there looking at me. The way his blue eyes cut into mine made a chill run down my spine. It wasn't a predatory or a sexual stare. It felt more like he was examining me, studying me, and trying to read every tilt of my head and blink of my eyes. It made me extremely uncomfortable. So, are you interested in any of this? The tomatoes looked really good today, I said. I try not to sound nervous. Or if you're looking for something else, I can go pick it for you. Only the Gershons can provide what I'm looking for. Okay, well, I'm going to go back up to the farm. If you change your mind, the prices are listed on the whiteboard. And you can just leave the money in the box. I shot him a fake smile, turned around, and headed up the hill as quickly as I could, without seeming weird. But then he said something that made my blood run cold. Normally, I never told him my name. The smartest thing would have been to run, but instead I turned around. He wasn't chasing me, he was still standing at the farm stand at 10 yards from me. I wouldn't trust the Gershons if I were. You! He called out, and then he turned on his heel and strode away. As I watched him go, I realized there wasn't any car part at the bottom of the driveway. He just turned onto the old country road and walked away. I watched him until he rounded the bed and disappeared from sight. I retreated into the house, checked all the locks, and decided that I would spend the rest of the day inside, at least until it was time to feed the animals and stalk the farm stand again. When I fed the goats that evening, they still seemed mad at me from the morning with all the pig business. I hadn't gotten their morning meal to them until nearly 10 a.m. And as I entered the pen, they eyed me wearily. Ma, a brown one, bleated with a look of betrayal, and it slit people's eyes. My last task of the day was picking up the unsold produce. I hurried down the driveway and garden, hot in my arms, an audiobook playing through my earbuds. The sun hung low in the sky, casting shadows that stretched across the driveway before me. The sun wasn't setting that. Wouldn't be for another hour, but it still made me nervous. Most of the produce was gone, but I grabbed the 3 remaining zucchini and I put them in the hod. And then I turned around and hurried back up the hill as fast as I could. But when I crested the hill, I saw something in the fields that made my heart stop. A scarecrow. Its head hung limply on its shoulders. I couldn't see it in detail. It was too far away, but I could see it, silhouettes clearly. I immediately broke into a sprint. Just get inside, you'll be fine. I focused on the white door. It was still so far away, but I forced myself to stare at it to keep my eyes away from the scarecrow. Just run as fast as you can, and I made it. I slammed the door shut, drew the deadbolt, closed all the curtains, and checked all the other locks. And then I collapsed onto the couch and called my boyfriend Derek. You have to come here. I told him there's someone out there, and I ran inside, but I think I rambled on in incoherent sentences until he interrupted me. Wait, slow down. You think there's somebody out? There, yes. Are you sure? Now, Derek was a good guy, but he often thought that I was being just a little too paranoid a lit. Talbot scared. When I had insisted I was being followed home from work, he told me that it was probably nothing, and just some guy walking the same way as me. When I heard sounds in the middle of the night, he insisted that it was just the house settling. When I watched true crime shows and told him how we need to do X or Y so we don't fall victim to a crime like that, he would laugh. It wasn't intentionally mean, but in these moments it was painfully obvious that he had grown up as a man with little to be afraid of in this world, yes. I'm sure they said the farm doesn't use scarecrows, and there's a scarecrow standing in the hell watching me. I heard a loud sigh on the other end. Are you saying you don't believe me? I didn't say anything, he said calmly. Well, you sighed. Okay. Sorry, it just sounds really... He trailed off. Never mind, please just come over here. I'll explain everything. Why don't you come over here? Well, because if I go outside and the scarecrow will get me? Silence. And then I realized that sentence did sound pretty unhinged on its own. Just listen. There's been some really weird stuff happening on this farm. And then I launched into an explanation of everything. The list of rules of the sunflowers, the cornfield, even the pig man. Why didn't you tell me all this earlier, he asked, when I had finished. Because you wouldn't believe me, I mean. You still don't. I'm trying to just... This sounds a lot like a ghost story or something like that. You know, another sigh. But look, I can tell that you're upset. I'm coming over, okay? I'm leaving right now. I'll be there in a half hour. I ended the call and stared at the curtains for a minute. I was tempted to part them to make sure the scarecrow hadn't gotten closer. But I wasn't going to disobey the rules. When Derek arrived, I took every precaution to get him inside safely. I told him to park as close to the house as possible, look around for scarecrows, and then run as fast as he could. As soon as he was inside safely and my fear melted away, we put on a movie, had some good laughs, and then went to bed. But around 2 a.m. something woke me with a start. And when I sat up, I realized that Derek was gone. Derek, I called out, walking into the hallway. Where are you? Lenny didn't reply. I walked downstairs. I found him standing in front of the window, appearing outside. Hey, I hissed. You're not supposed to be. Looking outside, there's someone out there. My blood ran cold. I joined him at the window and scanned the fields. I don't see anyone, no. There was definitely somebody out there. His fingers inched towards his belt, and my heart plummeted when I saw the shiny black metal sticking out of his pocket. You brought your gun. You said you were scared, he whispered back. You said that somebody was out there. I didn't really believe you. But now I do. Aren't you glad I brought it? No, I never want to be near that thing. Okay, we could have some stupid debate about this later, but right now, there's somebody out there. And if we just go back to sleep, we might not wake up in the morning. Derek, I'm just telling it like it is. I crossed my arms and stared out into the fields with them. And then just as I was about to turn away, I saw it. A shadowy figure walking along the edge of the sunflower field. Derek didn't waste any time. He unbolted the door and swung it open. Hey, you will get off our property. I've got a gun. The figure stopped, paused, and then sidestepped into the sunflowers before I could stop them. Derek ran out. Ears of the house, Derek, I shouted. But he didn't stop. I paused at the threshold, and then I sprinted out after him. Come back, crap. He was running straight for the sunflower field. Don't go in there. He probably wouldn't have even stopped. But when he got to the border, I screamed a bloody murder at him, and he stopped for just a moment. You can't go in there. I panted at grabbing his arm. The sunflowers. Yeah, you told me they're evil there. Watch you or something? I think I can. To handle myself. He gestured. It was gone. And if I don't scare this guy, he's going. To come back and do whatever he came here to do. And with that, he disappeared into the foliage. I stood there panty, and at the border of the field. He'll be okay. I lied to myself. Yeah, he'll be okay. As the adrenaline faded, I lifted my head and scanned the flowers. They were all turned towards me, yellow. Petals appear in silver in the light of the full moon. Okay, it's okay, they're all pointing in the same direction. See, wait, there was a single flower in the center of the field. It turned away from me. My blood ran cold. Derek, come out of there. Silence. No ponding. Footsteps. No rust, like nothing. The chill ran over my body. Here, please come out. I begged, staring into the shadowy darkness under the flowers. And then I heard it now. Derek's voice strangled in pain. I reacted instinctively. My feet hit the dirt, and I stumbled into the darkness, leaves a brush to my body scratched at. My arms, Derek, I called her. The sunflower is stretched up 6, or even 7 feet tall. The moon that heads are swaying in the breeze above me. I turned to full circle, looking in every direction for Derek, but all they saw were more stems. More leaves more inky black. Shadows, Derek, where are you? I stopped walking and listened, straining my ears for any sort of sound. And then, after several seconds, I heard something so rustling. But there was just one problem. It was coming from right above my head. I looked up. The sunflower directly above me was tilted straight down. In this close, I saw it clearly. Its head wasn't full of seeds now were. The seeds it should have been. There was just an abyss of pure black. And there are things between the petals and the abyss. White, sharp things all pointed towards the center teeth. I broke into a sprint. With both arms, I pushed the sunflowers out of the way, forcing myself through the field. Derek, I screamed, but all I heard was more rustling above my head, as all the sunflower is tilted towards me, and their mouths opened and rows of sharp fangs gleaming in the moonlight descended towards me, and then something grabbed my arm. I was dragged through the fields, the foliage snapping and rustling underneath me now. I screamed, but as my legs kicked against the dirt, I realized that I was powerless as I was dragged to my death. I was staring up at the stars. I shot up, the thing clasped around the arm was into sunflower. It was a hand, an old and wrinkled hand. I looked up to see a bowler hat and a dark suit, the old man from the farm stand. And there, several feet away from me in the dirt, was Derek. He was breathing hard, alive, but his right arm was covered in dark blood that spilled out into the soil. I think it's time we had to talk, he said calmly as he let go of my arm. What were you thinking going into the sunflowers? The old man asked as he wounded gauze around to Derek's arm. What were you thinking? I saw you going to the field too, he replied. I went behind the field to hide friends. The crazy man with a gun. You were looking around out there at 2 a.m. What was I supposed to think? Derek shot back and grimacing in pain. And you. The old man sat it, pointing squarely at me. You should have known that if he couldn't kill whatever was attacking him, with a gun going in after him was an idiot move. I wanted to save him. I said, arms crossed. Oh, so you were armed too? No. He shook his head. I caught the phrases stupid kids and muttered under his breath. And then he took off his hat, set it in the middle of the table, and glanced at each of us. I'm going to tell you what's going on here, and then I hope you can help me. Derek and I exchanged a glance. How do we know that we can trust you? He asked. And he just saved our lives. I replied. He was hanging around outside in the middle of the night for no good reason. It was a good reason, the old man snapped, glaring at Derek. And if you listened to me for 1 minute, you would understand. Come on, I whispered, squeezing Derek's hand. Okay, fine. The old man has straightened himself and then began to speak. The Gershons started this farm almost 20 years ago. They bought the plot of land from an old widow who had lived here her entire life. She didn't want to sell it, but she needed the money while they drove the contract. But at the last moment, they changed the paperwork and triggered her into selling it for half the price. When she realized that she had been tracked, she cursed the land itself. But they just laughed. They didn't believe in curses or superstitions or the supernatural. The old man stopped and looked pointedly at Derek. He broke eye contact, bitey, and looked at the floor. And of course, as soon as they planted the sunflower field, they realized that the curse was very real. Eventually, they tried to sell the property, but by that time, news of the curse had spread and they would only get a fraction of what they had paid. They weren't willing to lose their money, so they kept it. And with time, they learned that if they followed certain rules and stayed careful, they could grow some crops and turn a profit. But no one's perfect. After some close calls, the Gershons decided they didn't want to risk their lives, but they were perfectly fine with risking other people's lives. So they started hiring people to tend to the farm. They preyed on the weak, at the disadvantaged, the desperate single mothers, undocumented immigrants, people who were new to town, who hadn't yet heard of the curse or were too desperate to care. The deal was a good one. a share of the crops, a place to live in, decent pay. This is where I come in. My daughter was one of these people. She was a single mother and died. I was terrible. He paused and swallowed, as if swallowing emotion, but his face remained stoic. I wouldn't let her and her son stay with me. When she was evicted from her apartment, I thought it would cause too much conflict with my wife. And I was trying so hard to make it work, but now I see that none of that mattered. He sucked in a breath. A few weeks later, she was hired by the Gershons, and neither she nor my grandson were ever seen again. Derek and I sat there in stunned silence. I'm so sorry, I finally choked out that that's horrible. Then help me get them back, he said, a pleading look in his eye, and to get them back. No, they're not dead. You see, I recognize the voice in the cornfield. It's the voice of my grandson. Silence fell over the three of us, Derek, and I looked at each other. The old man must have noticed our confusion because he continued. The victims aren't always killed. Sometimes they're transformed, like my daughter and grandson in the cornfield, or the scarecrow, or the pigs. I clapped my hand over my mouth. The pigs, he nodded. No. I called the police, and when I saw one, and they came, and I think tears burned my eyes. I think they killed him. I'm so sorry to hear that. It's not your fault, though, have a lot of power in this town. They ever deal with the police and dirty. Cops have been known to get rid of evidence in the sunflower field, he sighed. I've devoted the past 3 years of my life to this. I've run into every obstacle. I know everything there is to know, a lot of it. I learned from the widow's children directly. So, is there a way to get them back? The people who were transformed, I asked. Yes, I was never able to get into the house before her. The Gershons made sure of that. But now, he reached into his pocket and pulled out what appeared to be a small mesh bag. Within, among what looked like dried plant material, I could make out something long and white. A bone. This is what the widow used to create the curse. Her daughter told me it was hidden beneath the medicine cabinet in the bathroom, and there it was. Using this, I should be able to reverse the curses of facts. He glanced at Derek and then back at me. So will you help me? I paused, looking into the old man's blue eyes, and then I nodded when we began at dawn. The sun crested over the hill, ascending long shadows over the path. The old man led us to the edge of the cornfield, which now in the daylight it didn't look so ominous. The stalks swayed gently in the breeze, illuminated in gold from the rising sun. Are you ready here? Derek and I stood several feet away as he lifted the bag he recited as several sentences of Latin, or some other language, something that he had memorized in his research. I assumed. He nearly shouted the last sentence, and then he dumped the contents of the bag in the ground. The dry leaves is scattered in the wind. The bone twirled in the air, and then balanced into the dirt. For a minute, nothing happened, but then I heard it. A soft rustling from within the corn. Slowly, it grew louder and louder. I grabbed Derek's hand and squeezed it, embracing myself for some eldritch horror to come out, but it had worked. A woman walked out of the core, and tall and thin, holding hands with a smiling little boy. I will hatch to my eyes well enough with tears, as the woman hugged her father. And then as both of them hugged, a little boy come on, the old man said, wiping his fucking tears. It's time for you to come home. The old man started down the driveway, towards the main road, with his daughter and his grandson in his wake. Dread a twisted. My God, something felt off. He was just leaving without looking for the others, without even a glance in our direction. I scanned the farm, but I didn't see anyone emerging. Didn't hear any voices. Hey, I called out. What about the others? The old man stopped and turned around. He wasn't smiling. I'm sorry, he said it. My heart sang further. What do you mean you're sorry, the curse? It can't be reversed, he said. His blue eyes are glinting in the rising sun. The only way to free someone from the farm is to give someone in their place. No, he doesn't mean. I'm sorry, the old man said it. He put his arm around his daughter. She looked back at us with sadness in her eyes, holding her little boy's hand. And then he continued it down the driveway. "Don't walk away," I screamed. "Emily," Derek started. "Come back here right now, Emily." This time, Derek's voice had an odd quality to it. It was muffled, raspy. I whipped around and froze. Straw was poking out of Derek's mouth. "No!" I screamed, stumbling over to him, but it was too late. His skin was sickly grey. His eyes were glassy and blank, and his lips, they almost looked like they had been drawn on with marker. I watched in horror as the man I loved had turned into a scarecrow Derek. I sobbed. "Please." His body was still above me, arms stretched stiffly out of the sides, flannel shirt stuffed with straw. A burlap had hanging limply on his shoulders. And then he moved his head, swung wildly towards me, his eyes, and nothing more than buttons fixed squarely on me. I ran as fast as I could towards the house, but I could feel something changing inside me. Everything felt off balance. My legs felt all wrong, bending and twisting underneath me. I stumbled inside and collapsed to the floor, crying. But I knew that I was changing too. For some reason, my changes are happening more slowly than Derek's, but when I look in the mirror, I can see the changes. My nose is longer, my ears are twisted, and my skin is pinker. So I tried to type this up as quickly as I could. "Please stay far away from Gershon Farm. Don't buy this stuff. Don't go to work there. Don't do anything. Run as fast as you can and never look back." I would say more, but it's getting harder. To type, the space between my fingers is melting away. My hands are growing stiff. In just an hour or so, they will be hooves, and I will have no way of communicating with the outside world. So please, whatever you do, don't come to Gershon Farm.